I'm thrilled on this episode of Your Brand Amplified to have Mark Ashby, who is joining me from around the world. Mark, thank you so much for getting up bright and early to be on our show.
Thanks, Annika. Pleasure to be here.
Absolutely. So I'd love for you to talk a little bit about, because you've had an interesting journey to get to your consulting firm. So please share your backstory with our audience.
Yeah, typically I've grown up in Sydney my whole life. I grew up at the beach, so I was riding a surfboard by the time I was 5 years of age. My dad was a surfer, so it's just a natural progression from where I was. And I went through that normal sort of system through high school and the public system like in Australia. And I was actually a tradesman when I was a young guy. I was an electrician, and I never sort of really had that big plan of where my life was going. And I was traveling a lot overseas. I was surfing around the world and doing a little bit of competing, and that was my sort of life. And then my father sort of pulled me aside when I was a young guy, in my sort of 20s, and was like, "What are you doing with your life?" And yeah, so I've always had a little bit of a fascination with the military, especially the sort of specialized side of the military, the army. And so that's where I really, it was a big decision that changed the course of my life, I suppose. Where I went and joined up, and like I said, I always had that dream of maybe getting to one of the specialist units, and I luckily managed to get into one of the sort of elite units in the Australian Army, as a parachute unit.
Wow.
And yeah, so that was when my journey went through there. Did a couple of sort of operational tours of a place called East Timor, which was close to us. Was a bit of a conflict there, and around about a year, I suppose, after the Twin Towers came down in New York, which is, I know it changed all your lives, but it also changed, I suppose, a lot of our lives around the world in everything we did. Because I was in the army at the time, and like everybody in the army, we all want to go and do those deployments. We all want to go on operations, and especially in the more specialized units. And our unit was sort of mucking us around a little bit, toing and froing whether to go or not. And I got an offer to go over as one of the private guys, which I took up in 2004. And also, all of a sudden, I found myself in Iraq, and that's where I was, flying over there in 04. I'm one of the first plane loads of private guys. I think I was on the first plane load of Australian guys to go over, and it was a huge shock to the system, to be honest.
I'm sure
it was actually a lot more than what I had anticipated. It was really big. It was the first time I'd ever actually been into a proper war zone, and nothing really prepares you for it. You think you're ready for it, but it was a real shock to all of us that went over. I intended to stay there for maybe a year and then go back into my old unit. But I think 11 years later,
wow,
I left Iraq. Yeah, and I ended up doing, I think, 40 rotations, and I think around about 1,600 missions over there in that time.
My gosh.
Yeah. I was attached to a lot of your guys for a while. I was attached to the US Army, with the Green Berets, and for a couple of sort of projects over there, we call them. And ended up becoming a real experience, I suppose. It changed my life. Just the level of what we did, and you never hear the good stories about what we did over there. You always sort of hear the horror stories, but we did some really good work over there. And it was a great experience, great time to be actually attached to your guys as well. Yeah, I came home in 2015 from Iraq full time, and ended up working for the government, and then working for a friend of mine in the corporate sector in sort of like a risk management style environment, working for the media, the big media companies, which I really enjoyed. I thought I would not like it, but I actually really enjoyed it. Just using all my years of experience to, I suppose, help people get the best out of themselves, and a bit of sort of crisis awareness and things like this. Went off to university at 48 years of age and did my master's degree, which was a bit of a challenge at my age. And but honestly, it was probably the best thing I've ever done. Bit terrifying, and to learn all the new systems in place, and everything's changed. With technology now, your libraries are online, but it was a great experience. And to actually be a student back there at my age was fantastic, and I really loved my time there. And that was a combination then of really starting my own firm. I had couple of really good sort of mentors and a couple of good people in the media, senior sort of execs that sort of said to me, you know, maybe you should think about going out on your own. So that's what I did. I got the right help of a wonderful lady back here in Australia to help me with my brand and with all my website and all those things that I wasn't going to be really professional at. And that was another great decision. That was getting that help. And I haven't looked back, and that's what I'm doing now in that the whole corporate sphere.
And what was your master's degree in?
Yeah, it was in counterterrorism. So it's not really what I'm doing now, but it was just something that I wanted to do to get that done. And but it's more of, I suppose, a bit of a validation just for all my years of work. And it's funny, it's how it's tied in. You wouldn't think it has much to do with what I do now, but it all ties in together, because it gives you that whole background in crisis and how to work in a crisis, how to work under pressure, how to keep cool under pressure, all these sorts of things, which I'm really, I suppose, teaching now. That's what I do.
Yeah. So when you're working with companies now, are you primarily coming in when there already has been a crisis that you have to solve, or do you also come in to help them identify and assess before and know how to mitigate any risk in their companies?
A bit of both, to be honest. It can be when there's already been a major crisis that's occurred, and then you go in there and sort of unravel that, unpack that, why that happened, and how they can avoid that in the future. But sometimes it could also be with organisations that want to be a little bit preemptive, rather than reactive. They want to try and actually, and they're the ones I really enjoy, because you've really got the sort of, I suppose, the backing of that organisation from the top. But I'm also doing a bit of mentoring as well. So I go in there and mentor one-on-ones with generally from that board level right up to the CEO, where I'll spend time with them one-on-one, just to help them get the best out of themselves.
Yeah.
Whether they're in a bit of a bind in life, doesn't matter who we are. We've all got our own insecurities. Whether we're the janitor or whether we're earning $5 million a year, everyone's got their insecurities. And I suppose I can go in there and working for years and years under those pressure situations, really help people to get the best out of themselves, which I really enjoy.
Wow. Yeah. And that's exactly what I was going to say is, I know that I hear that people in the military, are great employees. People want to employ them because you've learned all of these skills. But it's not often I get to speak to somebody on my podcast about what skills you did learn. And it's so clear how you've applied your skills into helping businesses, companies, and people just be better, be more effective in what they do every day.
Yeah, absolutely. I think a big one a big lesson I take is that overseas, when we're conducting missions, it's such a high pressure environment where you can't afford to make major mistakes. We all make little mistakes, the ones that are sort of unforeseen. But when you've got your we call them our bread and butter mistakes, the ones that you should never make. That's where I can really teach people that, because we didn't have the luxury where if we made a big mistake of resetting the next day, maybe that mistake could result in somebody's losing their life, and you've got to live with that. Especially if they're a close teammate, you may know their families, know they've got children, and if that mistake's on you, you've got to live with that for the rest of your life. Where in the corporate world, generally 9 times out of 10, you may make a mistake. You think, okay, how do we reset? How do we apply that so we don't do it again? And this is the luxury of doing that. So it's a different mindset, but it is something you can really take into that corporate setting and really identify, because there's a lot of business out there that have they have massive whether it's their productivity, their profit margins, their stakeholders, and they've got to get it right. And a mistake could cost the company millions and millions of dollars.
Yeah.
And so there are a lot of the lessons I really take in there, and it's just getting them to sort of really slow down and take a moment in big crisis rather than panic and make that a real quick decision and make the wrong choice.
Yeah. And that's something that you really focus on, is high pressure environments where people can get really emotional, sometimes about the wrong things. So how do you collapse those emotional charges and emotional decision making so that people can make better decisions and be more effective then as leaders and really show their leadership?
Yeah, it's funny. So that it's actually sort of part of my my program. It's actually how to collapse an emotional charge to be more effective, to be a more effective leader. And how I do that is I really teach them how to look at the positive and the negative aspect of life. And what I mean by that is every decision we make, we generally do it on some sort of emotion. And a lot of the times you may look back and think, oh, I shouldn't have actually done that, or I shouldn't have made a decision that way or so hastily. Yeah. So what I do is I'll show them, a big decision that's been made. And like an example, it's a really easy example of, you may have an exec that leaves the firm. Maybe they've been a bit of a toxic leader there. That they've got a bit of a bad name in the business. They've been there for years, and they really run that place, bring all their friends in, that sort of, anything to do with promotions and external hiring, and they leave. So of course, maybe they've been fired, and everybody will then in the business will be asked, how does everyone feel about this person leaving? And the majority of that organization is going to be thrilled. They're going to be like, oh, it's fantastic that person has gone. It's so great. It's that toxic behavior is gone. But then I say to them, but what is the negative side of that? What are the negatives of that person leaving? There's now a hole there. All that experience has gone. Maybe they handed all the contracts and tenders there. It could affect the share price if it's big enough, if the person's important enough. And then who's got basically coming in then to replace that person? So it's it's a real. And we did that overseas on our teams. We actually, every mission we completed, we would take the emotion out and look at the positives and the negatives of every mission. And it's a really effective way of doing business.
And that is definitely something that we all need to, as an entrepreneur myself and a business owner. What you're saying makes so much sense. And I can pinpoint times in my work or in my life where I've made decisions based on emotion and later on gone, oh, why did I make that decision? I really should have taken time to think about that. So even something as simple as making those lists of the positives and the negatives, and thinking about how each scenario, what their positives and negatives are, which one outweighs, and what the impact will be, can change the whole trajectory of a decision.
Yeah, absolutely. And we do it every day in our life. It can be the most, ridiculous thing where you can have your favorite, restaurant that you go to for dinner. And it's when we're driving there, do you take the long route or the route, how you say it in the States, the long route or the short route? Is it raining? And there's all these things that we have to sort of weigh up. So yeah, and that's such a big one. If you can really put that into that, like I said, part of your business, and you have the whole masculine and feminine approach as well. So yeah. Like that whole masculine approach of business, where it's a whole approach to business where the masculine approach of doing things is that 70, 80-hour weeks. And that's that full forward approach of just relentless work versus that more feminine approach of, it's a bit more of a lateral approach. Of doing things a bit more sensibly, and that can also be, a real big dynamic in business.
That's interesting. I'd love to hear if you have any clients that you can share stories from. An example of a client that you went in and you helped mitigate a situation before a crisis occurred.
Yeah, I had one that was it was actually a bit of a cyber story when it was where they were talking about it, and it was a big attack in Australia at the time, and it was because generally with most cyber attacks you're going to have that sort of 5-week lag after a cyber attack where the business is really going to be crippled, and it was basically it was just a very, very simple preemptive thing. It was in the news a lot. We're talking about it in the board there. And I said, your firm is a prime example of that occurring. It's going to be a matter of if not when. That's just how it works in that whole, it was a style of business it was. And so we actually got talking about it, and that was the I suppose the suggestion in the end was to actually, act on it, because they had like a third party agreement, and they weren't really sure of where their assets were going to be in that whole cyber, I suppose, arena. And when they acted on that to actually cut that third party out and sort of bring the servers, more internal, it was a great stroke, because, within the total coincidence, I think it was 6 months later, they actually had a breach
Oh
in
my
that
gosh.
firm, and it could have been just a coincidence, of course. But they managed to have that a bit of, I suppose, continuity within the business, and it was able to keep rolling. They had that attack, but they'd already preempted that, and they had that sort of portion of the business that could keep rolling on and keep being profitable. And it wasn't 100% perfect, but at least it was a good scenario.
Wow. Yeah.
Because it can be so crippling.
Yeah, it could have been so much worse. I mean, you hear about these cyber attacks where people are holding up entire municipalities, not even just businesses, but just like buses, trains, things like that as well. And those are things that can affect all of our lives, not,
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, unbelievable. Absolutely. Any form of, like I said, a cyber attack now, it can cripple everything. It can be, an organization that has robots that maybe manufactures vehicles. They can target. I mean, they can target nuclear facilities now from overseas by putting a worm in there or something.
Yeah.
It's scary. If you are online, you can be hacked.
Yeah.
That's it. It doesn't matter what you do, as long as you have anything as part of that business that's an online capability. It can be the most ridiculous thing. And baby monitors are online these days. So you can get into someone's network through a baby monitor.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. You don't think about that when you're looking at my nephew. We all had downloaded the same app so we could watch my nephew at his house, but we don't think about that isn't safe.
Yeah.
Really, like we're just thinking of, oh, we get to watch our nephew do cute things and when he's playing in his room, and he lives a couple hours away, so we get to see him. But even that, something as innocuous can turn into something much worse.
Oh, absolutely. It's and like I said, there's some real sinister people out there these days. It's really amazing. There used to be individuals. It was the old story of some dodgy looking guy in somebody's in their grandmother's basement, doing cyber attacks. And those days have really gone. It's now teams, and it's from foreign actors, state actors, and they have these teams now, and they have their own specialities inside of the team for hacking, and they're targeting countries and holding people to ransom, holding giant organizations to ransom. So it's a real evolving, it's almost like an industry now that sort of, you've got the one side. It's like playing a game of tennis. You've got your opponents, you've got the hackers that are serving, and then you've got your organizations that are the receiver, and they've got to attempt to try and hit that ball back. And it's exactly what it is. And it's just a game.
Now, I know that one of the things that you like to talk about and that you also use in your business is working with core employees, with board members, as you said, in the C-suite. And but you also, when I have looked at your information pre-interview, you talk about how each company has 3 types of employees and how they impact team performance. So I'd love for you to talk to our audience about that.
Yeah, I think it comes down to that whole, and it can be in a real simple sort of I suppose way of explaining it, where I find a lot when you'll go do a boardroom talk, you're always going to have your sort of more that alpha sort of style of individual, and you're going to have that which is always a couple of individuals. You're always going to have that middle group of individuals that are generally your real, I suppose, broad spectrum of workers in the environment, and then you're going to have your I suppose your quieter sort of people. And it all depends on their contribution to the organization, and whether they're the ones that actually sometimes get almost left behind. It's a big thing that I love actually is going in there, and I love the people that are going to be your real confident workers that are part of that real, I suppose it's almost like a clique, that group there. It's if the way they're going about their business, the way they're going about their team environment there, if it's a good thing, then that's something that almost needs to be sort of, almost left alone and sort of just nurtured. But it's when you get that quieter sort of style of worker there that really has this amazing background, and a lot of them are they're almost inhibited in the organization. And I love trying to find those people and bring the best out of them. It can almost be sometimes where you'll go to, if you're dealing with, whether it's a CEO or you're dealing with somebody in senior HR, and it's almost an awakening. Like, you've got these amazing people here you don't even utilize, and it's quite amazing. They may have this amazing background and they keep getting overlooked. And I'll say to them, you've got these amazing people here that you don't utilize. This is their skill set. This is what they can bring to the table. And sometimes the best people are right in front of you, and rather than just hiring externally and things like this. And it's it's a difficult thing to get the best out of those people, because they're by nature they're going to be quiet. They're going to be a little bit apprehensive. But I've got my own ways of getting around that. Like I won't do it in that open environment in a board, or if I'm doing sort of teamwork there, I'll do it where I pull them aside somewhere. I'll go and have a coffee with them. Every organisation has a joint coffee room, and I'll basically follow them, and then try and find out who they are. And it's very interesting, isn't it? Because every environment you do have those 3 different types of employees. It's just a matter of, like I said, getting the best out of those people in that workplace.
Yeah. And I mean, I have people on my team who are like that, who are very quiet and who aren't the first ones to speak up and don't necessarily want to be client facing in our team, but they're amazing at what they do. And they have great ideas and great capacity. They just want to do the work. And so sometimes those people do get overlooked, or they won't get hired at a company because you have to understand how to work with the different personalities and the different types of people. And so that's kind of part of what you pull out of these teams as well.
Yeah, I think it's probably one of the skills I've got after being away for so many years and working in so many different environments and cultures and religions and all these things. You really learn to adapt, and you learn to get the best out of your people. You've really got to learn to trust them. I suppose that the areas we worked in, it's the trust is another level, because you've got someone's life in your hands, and they've got your life in their hands, and you've really got to learn to back those people and believe that they can have your back as well. And it's an interesting environment. It's a real alpha environment, but it's an alpha environment where the alpha, I suppose, personalities that are so overbearing there aren't really tolerated. They sort of they get sort of cast aside. It's not tolerated to be. You've got to be a super strong person, an alpha person, but also you've got to have that massive side of of empathy and things like this. Like I said, well, you've got to be like a light switch where you can turn on and turn off. 1 minute you may need to have that super aggressive mindset, but the next minute you may be in a village dealing with children, and this is what you need to be able to do. And that's where I suppose you bring that back into that professional environment, where you're talking to people every day in every form of life back, in the corporate world. And the whole point is you want to get, like you said, the best out of those people, to be the best version of themselves in that business. And if you've got a great environment there, those people thrive, and it's only going to be a great thing for that organization. And I wish more organizations were like that and recognize that.
Yeah, definitely. And another thing that you mentioned this a little bit earlier, toxic leaders and what you can do about them. So have you been into an organization where somebody maybe didn't realize they were a toxic leader, but everybody around them did, and it was affecting the business, and then you were able to turn that person around?
Yeah. That's a really good point. It's a difficult one where if you get it can be anybody. I've had it with male, female, both sides of the coin, and exactly right. They actually perceive that the problem is elsewhere in the organization, and it's actually, when you identify, it's actually you're the problem. Now, it may not be the CEO, it may be somebody on the board, it may be a senior manager, but it's always somebody that has a little bit of power, of course, and it's about identifying that. It's really interesting when you confront somebody with that as well. I think the big thing that people like myself, our background, we're not as intimidated to actually just go and basically tell somebody the truth, because we don't have our whole livelihood, I suppose, riding on it. Maybe somebody there they've got a big mortgage, they're in that business, they've got a big bank loan, and they're super intimidated to bring something up. They don't want to lose their job. But for us, like myself, I can go on there and really be honest with somebody. And I've generally found if it is like a senior person, a senior exec, it's about really removing that person from that work environment. It's about finding out about who they are, about their own life, even their personal life. Because quite often I find it's something personal that's affecting their judgment. Sometimes you will get that occasional one that's just a bit of a difficult individual, and it's just their personality, and it's very, very difficult to change that. But the ones that where you've got a crisis, where they're going through a divorce or a custody battle, they've just lost a loved one, they're the ones that you actually can get to the bottom of what's going on and really change that person's mindset, really take them, like I said, remove them out of that, and really do that bit of a paradigm sort of shift, I suppose, if you want to call it. And I try and instill in them that the great leaders that I've worked on some amazing leaders in my time. You remember those leaders forever. And I say to them, how do you want to be remembered in your organization? What is your own legacy that you want to be remembered by? Because right now, your people are coming here Monday morning and all they're thinking about is Friday afternoon. And I said, do you want that? Do you actually want your people coming here enjoying what they do and they're going to be more productive, or do you want them to come here and actually they can't stand what they're doing, and they're even spending their weekends thinking about their work? And that's the last thing that that we want.
Yeah. And I'm just floored by the number of lessons about life that you learned overseas and dealing with all these cultures and dealing with how fast you have to react to certain situations, but also trying to make sure you're being proactive in these situations, and then being able to apply it to the business world and to people's lives every day. I mean, seriously, I feel like you're making such a big impact. Now, do you typically work just with other companies in Australia? Do you work with a variety of companies around the globe?
Yeah, no, I'm definitely multinational now, and I suppose it's so easy now, isn't it? Like you look at you and I, we're on opposite sides of the world, and we're talking. So it's so easy now, and it's just going to get better and better, the technology. And I hope now with the world sort of coming back to a little bit of normality, I can start heading back away again and doing it actually in person, because I love nothing more than actually doing that one-on-one human interaction. That's what I love. That's my skill set. That's where I'm going to be in my sort of better environment. And using all those tools that I learned overseas. So yeah.
And I also, something struck me about what you said when you were talking about getting to the bottom of how somebody is toxic or why they're exhibiting toxic behavior at work, and how just speaking to them, showing them some empathy, can help redirect that. And that's another tool that you use a lot when you're working with these companies.
Yeah. It's such an important one, and I think it's not a skill that everybody has. It's something that I realized that I had after many years, and people actually letting it's when external people actually say, look, you've got a real skill in doing this, and you're like, okay, do I? And I suppose that I grabbed that and I really sort of ran with that. And I think you've got to be a good listener. You've got to be someone who can really sit back and listen and listen to someone's story. And I found that I can really, I suppose, get under that person's, get under their sort of their walls. If they've got a wall up, I've got a bit of a skill of sort of getting behind that and really sort of getting them to open up. If I'm in an environment where I can't do that with someone, they're a bit of a tough cookie. So because I'm pretty good like that, I'm pretty understanding, and the biggest thing is just to listen, and people will open up, and then it's like, okay, there it is, there's the problem. And it can, we've all been through tragedies. I've been through big divorce myself, and things with children and stuff, and so we all understand how hard it is, and the effect it has on your professional environment, because I've been there myself. And you empathize with people. It's like, okay, I understand what you're going through. You've maybe got a staff of 1,000 people, or maybe big, massive worldwide company. And like I said, even the biggest, and you'd be surprised, some of the people that I've worked with that have got real insecurity issues in their lives, and they're real high performers,
Wow.
Some of them people you would have heard of in the public life, then it's, because at the end of the day, we're all the same. We're all come from the same place, and we're all going to the same place. We're all just we're all fallible, and we've all got those little things that we sort of we doubt ourselves. I suppose it's a really good way of putting it. Yeah, it's very interesting.
Yeah. So what's next for you?
Yeah, like I said, I'd love to start doing a bit of traveling again. I'm very fortunate that I love what I do, Annika. I love every day meeting new people, even people like yourself, just chatting to new people and getting out there and doing that. And so I really love what I do. I love having an effect on people's lives. And if I can change someone's life in a positive way, then for me, it's been a good day out. It's been a successful day. And that's what I'd really love to sort of to keep doing. But yeah, the one-on-one stuff is what I love. And especially even in the States and things. So I've got a huge history with the States. I've done a lot of work with the US military and even the government over the years. So it's a place that I'm very sort of comfortable with, and the people. So it's some place I'd like to get back to as well.
Oh, Now, when you work with clients, how do people find you? Is it mostly referral? Do people just go to your website and learn more about your services?
Yeah, so I've just my website's it's very similar to my name. It's just markashbyconsulting.com. It's Mark with a K. And my email address is mark@markashbyconsulting.com. And it's just Mark Ashby Consulting on LinkedIn as well, which I'm pretty prevalent on LinkedIn as well. So I sort of do a fair few posting there during the week and a bit of engagement with people, which I really enjoy. And that's the best way to find me. I've actually got a free masterclass on my website that people can go and have listened to.
Oh,
And they can get a bit more of an idea about me and what I do and my services.
yeah, fantastic. Now, is there anything else that you want to share with our audience that I haven't asked you about?
Oh, the only thing that I really, I suppose, that I really like to sort of promote is that, to your listeners is, if you've got a bit of a dream in life, a bit of an aspiration, then don't be afraid to chase it. We're only here for one go at it, and don't live your life with regrets. I mean, I'm a perfect example. If you want something bad enough in life, you can achieve it. You don't have to be the most academic person in the world, or as long as you've got a good idea, a bit of drive, and you understand what you're good at, then take that chance and go out and chase your dreams.
Wow. Yeah, thank you. That's really important. And lastly, I don't want to put you on the spot, but do you have a favorite quote or mantra or something that resonates with you that you live by?
Yeah, I've got one that I used to have overseas, and I don't want this to sound too macabre, but it's one I lived by overseas, and it was like I'd rather die trying than die not, and that was my one overseas I used to have on the teams, and that was basically don't just give up. If you're in a bad situation, don't give up. Just keep going and get yourself out of that situation. So that's one that I used to sort of run by, and it's just you don't want to die on your knees. You want to go out standing up. That was my sort of line.
Yeah, but I think that translates to everything that we do.
Yeah.
If you don't try, what is life? You're never going to know.
Yeah, that's
So,
right. So
yeah.
absolutely. Yeah. Like I said, and I've seen how fallible life is. I've seen how it can be taken away in the instant. So yeah, you've got you want to enjoy yourself while we're here.
Yeah. Well, I so appreciate you getting up early to get on this interview with me and share your wisdom and share your story and journey with our audience. I know that they're going to be as inspired as I am through this conversation. And it's helping me rethink people that I work with, whether it's in work or volunteerism or my daily life, who, to look at them with some compassion and empathy when they're going through tough times or when they're exhibiting toxic behavior, and take a step back like you do and
Yeah,
really think through. Yeah.
there's always a reason. I think 9 times out of 10 there's a reason behind it. There's something there, and you just got to dig a little bit deeper and find out what it is.
Yeah. Wonderful. Mark, thank you so much. Really appreciate you being on. Thank you to our listeners. I will share all the information on how to get a hold of Mark. Go watch his masterclass. Go learn more about him and everything that he does. And I'll be back again for another episode next week.